Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a US election special where I'm going to give you my prediction for what it's worth, which is precisely nothing really. I'm some random English dude on the south coast of the UK waffling on about essentially stuff that is of no concern to him, you random British bloke. I am obsessed with the American election, and I've been giving you all my videos, of course, so it's probably time that I gave you a proper prediction. I was going to do this at the end and lead you towards the prediction so that you can understand why I was making a prediction, but actually I'm going to do the prediction and then look at why I'm a little bit not confident, or why I think certain states might go in certain ways. Now, this is a map that gives us an indication as to what's pretty much going to happen. You've got these ones in beige that are pretty much toss-ups. Although actually this map had Arizona not in that. It had it in a lighter red, in a sort of pinky colour. But these are your battleground states. You've got Wisconsin, you've got Michigan, you've got Pennsylvania. You've got North Carolina, Georgia, and you've got Arizona and Nevada. These Sunbelt states. And then these Rust Belt northern states there. I would say there are some other places to look. By the way, you got Nebraska's 2nd district, looks pretty much in the bag there for the Democrats. Florida's going to be interesting to look at. I don't think it's going to go to the Democrats. I think the early votes make it look pretty much sorted for the Republicans. The question about most of these states, certainly places like North Carolina, Georgia to some degree, Florida as well. If you think Florida is going to go to the Democrats, then it's going to be about the MPAs, about the independents, the non-party affiliates. Where are they going to skew? Are they going to skew Democrat? And if so, to what degree? Looking at the early data, the early voter data, it's unlikely that Florida is going to flip blue. But, and here are my thoughts. My range of the possible outcomes go from a possible, so this is the possible victory, the pathway for Trump, which is takes Texas, takes Florida. You maybe got you've got Wisconsin, Michigan, let's put them blue. I'm not really worried about the colour. Maybe keep Pennsylvania, very, very slight chance for Trump. And then you've got maybe Arizona, slight chance. And then Georgia, slight chance. North Carolina, I think Nevada's possible. I don't know. I think either of those are going to be blue. But that's really, it's about Pennsylvania, because if Pennsylvania goes blue, then you've got Democrats winning. So if Pennsylvania is the key, right? So Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, those 3 states. If Pennsylvania goes blue, then the other 2 are going to be blue already. It's the key is Pennsylvania. So I think Trump's victory has to go through Pennsylvania, and obviously depends on him taking all of these as well. I actually don't think it's going to happen, but that is your most likely situation for a Trump win. Pennsylvania going to the Republicans, and actually you could afford to say lose North Carolina and you've still got it. So it's all about Pennsylvania. So I think the chance of Trump winning is the best case scenario for the Republicans is something like this. I think this is their best case scenario. The worst case scenario for Trump is that all the battleground states go blue. And that is possible. It is well within the realms of possibility there, because as David Plouffe said today, they have a chance at all 7 states, the Democrats. So I think the range goes from a just about eked out Republican victory, dependent on Pennsylvania, through to this result, which is unlikely, but it could happen. So the range is a very tight Republican win to a really comfortable Democratic win. Now, if you just plonk for the middle of that as being the most likely outcome, that's not a valid move, by the way. But just in the middle of that, you get quite a comfortable Democratic win. My thoughts are that actually Pennsylvania will be won, probably just by the Democrats, although we're going to look at some details there that might look good in terms of those voters getting out there today. It's all about enthusiasm. My last video was about the enthusiasm on the rally trail, and at the moment the Republicans are really lacking in enthusiasm and the Democrats are riding high on a wave of momentum and energy. I think North Carolina is looking good, and that's because the independents, it's basically breaking third, and the independents, if they skew to the Democrats as I think, then they'll win. The other thing that people aren't talking so much about, like if you look at someone like Dave Trotter from Voting Trend, he talks about the actual data of registered Republicans, Democrats and independents, or MPAs, and says, well, actually looking at the who's come out to vote already and how they're registered and comparing that to previous elections, then this is what I predict. I think that you are going to see a leakage of registered Republicans to Democrats that is going to be significant, certainly in a number of these battleground states. So some of the early stats need to be interpreted through those lens. So through that lens. So even if you're seeing like 100,000 Republican voters, registered voters, and 100,000 Democratic registered voters coming out to vote, if you've got, say, a 10% swing of, or 10% of those registered Republicans are going to vote Democrat, because you're getting a lot of women particularly saying, no, actually, I'm not going to vote Republican, I'm going to vote Democrat because of reproductive rights, etc., etc. If you do get 10% of those registered switching over from Republican to Democrat, then it becomes a lot more comfortable. So the question for me is, how many registered voters are the Republicans going to lose to the other side compared to the Democrats lose to the other side? I did my own straw poll, and it's about a ratio of 3-1 for registered Republicans against Democrats, and it was a ratio of 5-1 in terms of registered independents breaking Democrat to Republican. Now, that was my own straw poll of people there'll be a selection bias of the sort of people that watch my channel, but you get the point. That I think that is going to underwrite some of the success. I think Georgia is looking better. So at the beginning of the early vote, Georgia was looking a bit dodgy. And as time has gone on, the Democrats have come out and have voted more and more. Arizona is something I'm just not sure about, and I think Nevada will eventually come through because, as many people talk about, they've got this ground game in Nevada that's very, very good. It's the Harry Reid ground game, the late politician who's a Democrat that put into place in Nevada a really good network and organization of activists and mechanics for getting out the vote effectively in Nevada, and that's been relied upon a lot, especially as it gets closer to the election, on the election day. So while early votes weren't looking so good, and again, you don't know with early votes because you don't know how many are going to leak from one side to the other, but it's likely that Nevada will just about go blue. So my guess is something like that, with Arizona not really sure. But it could be fairly good for the Democrats. But if we have Arizona going to the Republicans, then that's 308 to 230. Georgia and North Carolina are going to be close. That's a close call. And obviously, it's all about Pennsylvania. Now, that is a really good win for Democrats, and it's not reflective of where the polls have been nationally over the last few weeks, where everyone's like, oh my goodness, it's going to be so tight. Interestingly, I think Arizona, I've said to you, Alaska is somewhere that the Democrats should have put a bunch of money. So I think that would have been an easy win for 3 extra electoral college votes, because remember, you have all of these states have a different number of electoral college votes, and you need to get 270 to win. That's half of 538. That's why the website 538 is called that, because there are 538 electoral college voters. Alaska has Senator Lisa Murkowski won in a GOP primary against the GOP candidate who was put against her, she is GOP, she's Republican, Lisa Murkowski, but they were going to go against her, so they put someone against her, and then she ran who won the primary, sorry, and then she ran against them as a sort of independent Republican, and she won because people wrote in her name on the ballot. So Alaska's an interesting place whereby I don't think it's hard baked as Republican. I just think it's a forgotten place, and actually ranked choice voting there has put a Mary Patola in as a local of Inuit descent, I think, who has won for the Democrats there because of ranked choice voting. And I think if you put a bunch of money in, if Kamala Harris had gone there and to Anchorage and given a rally, I reckon you could have picked up Alaska. That's just my little theory. I think you could put some attention to Alaska and turn it into a bit of a battleground state. Now, Texas is going to be interesting. The question is how much of a shift is Texas going to see? Over time, Texas has been getting more and more Democratic. It's been skewing bluer and bluer. Ted Cruz is there. Will he lose to Colin Allred in the senator race? Now, you might have a situation whereby Cruz gets ousted by Allred, but Trump still gets in, because what you get a lot of is undercounting. I think, is it undercounting? Is that what it's called? Whereby people go into the polling booth, they put Trump in, and either because they don't like Cruz, because Cruz is unpopular, he's deeply unpopular even with a lot of Republicans, or they don't bother. Actually, they just don't bother going down ballot. So they put a vote in for Trump and then hand their ballot in. And if that happens and all the Democratic voters are voting Colin Allred, then Colin Allred has a chance of winning in Texas, even though it might remain Republican for Trump. The question is, what's going to happen at the next election? So in 4 years' time, 2028, we might see Texas go blue. But will we see it this election? It's hard to say. Well, that was rather opportune in some ways. I was obviously doing this video, my prediction, and my mate just phoned me and was like, what's going to happen? I want to know. And now I forget where I was with you guys. Anyway, we've got that range. I think Pennsylvania is the key, and we're now going to look at exactly... Oh, that's it. I was talking about Texas. So Texas is going to go bluer and bluer. Will it flip this election? It's unlikely, but I am seeing an awful lot of anecdotes coming out of Texas, and an awful lot of people saying that I was in this store and this happened, and I was amazed at how many people came and said this or did this, and I was here and there. And there are lots of anecdotes about how people are either flipping or there's an enthusiasm to vote blue in Texas. Is it enough? I don't think I've got enough data-driven evidence. Anecdotes are not good enough for me to say Texas will flip. But here's the thing, before we go and look at some of these other sources. If Texas flips, it doesn't matter what goes on all over the rest of the battleground states. 40 electoral college votes is massive. Texas is to the Republicans what California with 54 electoral college votes is to the Democrats. If Texas goes blue, that changes politics in the US going forward. There has to be so what you might get, so interestingly, Pennsylvania is trending redder and redder. So Pennsylvania is going, if you look at the registrations over the last sort of 8 years, it is going towards the Republicans. So you could get Pennsylvania switching and Texas switching. And Texas switching is way more important than Pennsylvania, obviously by double the amount. If you get Texas, you need Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, basically all three, to counteract that. So Texas is huge. I think you will see going forward from this election, the Democrats piling in all sorts of money into Texas. That is going to be the battleground state for the next 4 years. And if they win Texas and California, my goodness, that is huge. But anyway, I think the Democrats are going to eke out Pennsylvania. I think Arizona's a real toss-up. I think they're going to get Nevada. and it's going to look something like that. Georgia is a toss-up. That's a difficult one, but again, it doesn't matter if Georgia goes to the Republicans. It doesn't matter if Nevada goes to the Republicans. It doesn't matter if North Carolina goes to the Republicans. If the Democrats keep these 3 states up here, as you can see, all you need is 270 to 68, and that's the importance of Nebraska's 2nd district, and that was why the Republicans were legally challenging that to try and get that to sit with the rest of Nebraska, because they would have got that sewn up. But luckily, a guy who defected from the Democrats to the Republicans vetoed that from happening. So that Nebraska 2nd district maintaining its support for the Democrats means that 270, the Democrats can get 270 with just these 3 battleground states. But I actually do think Georgia's certainly not. I'm a little bit more confident about North Carolina. North Carolina and then Georgia and Nevada are kind of hopeful ones, but I think they will come through for the Democrats, and I think it will look something like that. But you could see Arizona go to the blue to Democrats, and you could see Texas go to Democrats, and you could even see Florida. I think it's unlikely, but these, and watch out for Iowa as well. So lots of possibilities here. I think the idea is there's more possibilities that some of these red places go blue than some of the blue places go red. I think places like Virginia, New Hampshire, etc., I think these are more likely to stay Democrats. Right, now, talking about that Iowa, the Ann Salzer Iowa poll is really interesting because the received wisdom was that Iowa's been forgotten by both parties. Remember that Ann Salzer poll that had Iowa up 3 points for Kamala Harris, and actually, that is well against the grain. Trump won that last time 8.2. So for there to be a swing to +3 for Democrats, that's a huge 11-point swing. I think they still have Kennedy on the ticket there, so that will change things. But nonetheless, people were talking about that and saying, well, there's been no money there. It's been this forgotten state. And actually, someone has something to say about this, a local who campaigns there.
Iowa is a state where neither campaign has spent any time or resources since the primaries.
That's Rachel
Maddow. They don't have
Maddow.
a ground game there. They don't have that.
As a Democratic organizer in the state of Iowa right now, I think you guys are missing a huge part of the story. In the last 2 years, it has been a Project 2025 hellscape, and Iowans are pissed off. And the reason why Iowa's flipping blue is because those pissed off Iowans have galvanized, and we have been knocking doors since the spring of 2023. So if anyone wants to know why Iowa's flipping blue, because we are fighting for our freedoms. We are scratching and clawing our way out of this disgusting hole that Republicans created. And I hope that they know the reason it's blue is because of them.
So the reason I'm showing you that is not because I think Iowa's going to go blue. I don't think it will. The question is that reflective of a larger movement towards the Democrats over the whole of the nation? And I think it does, and I think it's all about the women. Of course, it's all about the women. I think women and young people are going to win this election for Harris, but I am worried. I am deeply worried that Trump could win it as well. When I was listening to Pod Save America, where they were door knocking, there's a couple of these anecdotes that they had personally. They themselves were door knocking in, I think Arizona was one of the places mentioned, Pennsylvania as well. One of the responses was, oh yeah, I'm going to vote. Just, yeah, I'll probably vote next week. And they're like, you do realize the election's like tomorrow. Like, what do you mean you're going to vote next week? So there's still these low information voters who don't watch rallies, who don't pay attention to the news, who don't even know what day they are going to vote. And they were speaking to, I think it was an older Asian woman in Nevada, in Las Vegas. And he was saying that, she was like, oh, I think I'm going to vote for Trump, and why should I vote for Harris? And then he went, well, this is why, and this will affect you, this will affect you. And they basically convinced her to vote for Harris, and that's why you do door knocking. She's some 70-year-old woman. She's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to vote for Harris now. So there's another person who otherwise, had you not done the door knocking, would have voted for Trump. But it's this low information, didn't really know what was needed to be known in order to make an informed decision. So how many low information voters are out there that are not that concerned and will vote for Trump because Trump, hey, people that aren't aware of the Access Hollywood tapes, maybe young people that have grown up bypassed all of those kind of things that we know Trump has said that were pretty horrific, that are like, yeah, I don't really know about that. Oh, Trump, I'm really kind of worried about immigration, so I'm going to vote Trump, etc., etc. And that's it. I only know a couple of things. Trump seems quite funny. I see him on TV. That's the worry the Democrats have. Now, the flip side to that is that those people are not only low information voters, they're low propensity voters, which means those often young men are young white men, for example. They might be disaffected, or they might have a lack of information about the nuts and bolts of American politics, and might want to vote for Trump on a very superficial level, but they aren't likely to vote at all. So it's getting them off their arses and into the voting booth. So the Republicans, that's one of their demographic target areas. They need to enthuse them enough to vote. But then you're looking at the lack of enthusiasm from the rallies. Is that going to generate viral TikTok videos that's going to enthuse people to get off their arses and vote? And this is where people like Joe Rogan come in, interviewing Trump, then Vance, then Elon Musk. Those three people, and Kamala Harris didn't go on Joe Rogan, feeds into that demographic and getting them. But is it enough to get them out to vote? We shall see. Right, this is David Plouffe, who has been involved in Democratic campaigns for a long time. He looks exhausted, and that's a good sign. They're leaving it all on the field. This is him on CNN.
David Plouffe now is promised senior advisor to the Harris campaign. So, David, today, Kamala Harris spent the entire day in Pennsylvania. And it's a place, actually, where, of course, Donald Trump has been trying that unconventional ground game led by Elon Musk. Musk has been doing those town halls and getting buses, things like that, to try to get turnout even tomorrow. So how do you feel? Will Harris beat Trump even with that assist that he has gotten from Elon Musk in the state of Pennsylvania?
Before we answer that question, so part of the reason why I think what I do is that the Democrats have a massive ground game across the battleground states. So Pennsylvania on Saturday, on average, they were door knocking 2,000 doors per minute. 2,000 doors per minute. The Republicans, nowhere to be seen. They've outsourced their ground game to America's Super PAC, which is run by Elon Musk, which then outsourced it again to another company. They're paying people to come in, not looking after them well, not paying them very well, driving them around in these unseated U-Haul vans. Then these people won't really, because they're not volunteers, because they don't care about the politics, because they're not actual diehard Republicans, they are gaming the system. And so they're going on the app, pretending they're door knocking, standing outside someone's door, registers on the app, make up the answer, get back in the van. So you're getting these places where people are saying, we haven't seen a single door knocker, we haven't been knocked on the door by Republicans, and yet we've been rung and knocked on 6 times by the Democrats. So there's just this vast difference in the ground game, and that is an advantage the Democrats have. They've got momentum, they've got rallies that have enthusiasm and are on point, and the speeches are very well crafted. They have, and that breeds a contagion of people going out and wanting to help further, and wanting to speak to other people, and wanting to phone friends and convince them, etc., etc. The ground game is so super important. They've got the money, they've got the advertising revenue, the advertising funding advantage, so on and so forth. And I think all of these things together gives the Democrats an advantage when it comes to election day. So let's see what he has to say.
Well, Aaron, we've prepared for a long time that this was going to be a super close race. That's what, on the eve of the election, we're prepared for. We think we have momentum. We think we're closing well. We think we're winning more of the people who've decided in the last week than Donald Trump. And there's still undecided voters, as you mentioned in a previous segment, and we think we're positioned to win them. But we're not going to win them 90-10. It's still going to be a close race. I will say this through experience. I think outsourcing your field effort, meaning the folks knocking on doors, making calls.
This is what I was just talking about.
Largely to exclusively paid canvassers, historically just doesn't work. You want people showing up who are committed to your candidate, who are going to put in that 4 or 6 hour shift, might be from that area, know the community. So we think that's a secret weapon for us. We were knocking on 2,000 doors a minute in Pennsylvania over the weekend in all 7 battlegrounds, great weekend canvassing numbers, and are prepared tomorrow to make sure we're talking to everybody who we think's a Harris supporter who needs to vote on Election Day.
All right, so in Pennsylvania tonight, Harris is obviously there, and she's got a star-studded, set of performers. Now, of course, David, you remember.
So they then go on to talk about whether it's a bit of a risk that she's got this really big star-studded event, and that happened in 2016. It was a bit dodge. We won't go on to listen to that, but there was a lot more in that whole interview that is worth listening to. So the ground game is there. That's your big difference there. I do want to just pop into something he says a little bit later, though. Let's have a look at that. So his opinion is that they are closing strong. The ground game's been really good. The rallies are looking very good. And the early data seems to suggest that they've got reason to be fairly content.
Very important state, but as John said, it's very important that we have multiple pathways to 270. And, you know, just a couple hours ago, reviewing all the early vote data, what we're predicting.
Sorry, and he's talking about John Ralston, who is the Nevada guy, and we're going to pop in to look at what he has had to say. He is now, he's a very good sort of analyst in the Nevada area who was a bit dooming and glooming for Nevada, and this is the reason I've got Nevada as blue now, is he last night then has finally said, no, I think he's going to go blue. After going, the data's not looking great, and then it is looking good, no. So this is what they're talking about here, John Ralston's endorsement of Nevada.
Election day, how we think undecideds are breaking. We have a credible pathway to all 7 states tomorrow night to go into Kamala Harris's column, but we believe they're all going to be close.
Right, but you think you could win all 7?
Yes.
Can I ask you about Nevada on that? I mean, there's a path that involves that. John Ralston.
Oh, this is John Ralston bit.
Actually had been very cautious, to say the least, right? He had been very saying that he saw a lot of strength for Trump in Nevada up until recent days. He came out today and predicts that you will eke out a win, that Kamala Harris will win the state of Nevada. Now, obviously, you're saying you think you could win all 7, but do you share that optimism about Nevada specifically?
We've liked what we've seen. I mean, listen, what I think is largely been overstated in some of the analysis or coverage or cheerleading is, hey, there's a lot more Republicans voting early than there were in 20. Yeah, of course. Trump.
Okay, he's just about to say one of the most important things to understand, which I kind of talked about a little bit previously, which is that the early votes were looking quite good for Republicans, but actually then started looking better for Democrats in a number of key states. But that's because the Republicans had said, rather than 2020 when they said don't vote by mail, don't vote early, they then subsequently said for this election cycle, vote early. So when the Republicans then come out to vote early, it's a bit dangerous to say, and therefore the Republicans looking like they're going to win. No, it's a changing of voting habits, not a change in overall vote.
Trump told them not to vote in 20 early. In a feat of like epic political malpractice. So a lot more Republicans are going to vote early, and a lot of Democrats who voted early in 20, particularly by mail, want to go back to voting on election day. So when we look at the folks who voted so far, Democrats, Republicans, but particularly that very important group of voters that are not affiliated, we think that that adds up, as long as we do our job tomorrow, to a state that we can win, but narrowly. Now, history suggests that one of us, Trump or Harris, might have a hidden positive surprise that will do 2 points or 3 points better than the data suggests, and we'll see tomorrow. But we certainly are planning for a race where that doesn't happen, where it's literally going to, I think John Ralston's prediction today in Nevada was 0.3. It's possible across all 7 of these states. We could see the winner 0.2, 0.3, 0.8, 1 point. And again, that's where organization comes in, because if you've got the ability in the closing week and that closing day to talk to everybody you need to talk to, it makes a big difference.
Can I ask you, when you talk about...
So, really good points there from David Plouffe. Then we're going to add a few other nuggets.
What I've also found interesting, because I've been here for the last several days, and I've spoken to a lot of young guys, and there's been a lot of reporting about young men moving to the right, and there's a lot of truth to that. And I found, though, here in the Raleigh area, in Greensboro, and in a bunch of other counties here, young guys who are going to the polls with their sisters, their moms, their girlfriends, and when I would ask them what matters to you, they would literally point to the women in their lives and say, well, she's really worried about abortion rights, and I'm here basically on her behalf. And I thought that was really interesting because it shows us a dynamic and a side of young male voters that I think people haven't really accounted for or talked about as often in this race. And I think there's certainly an interesting energy here in North Carolina. So you're going to see Democrats out in full force, driving people, coordinating with people to support them tomorrow. They think they genuinely have a chance to pull this thing off.
So that's an interesting point, that actually it's not all about these disaffected young men that are going to vote, that are Joe Rogan podcast watchers. You can be a Joe Rogan podcast watcher and still actually feel that there is a potential assault on reproductive rights, etc., etc. So there is a bit of a counter point, really, a corrective to that potential narrative that is being espoused an awful lot. Here's another tuppence.
Listen, we feel good about what we're seeing in Pennsylvania and across the battleground states. I think when you look at the early vote data, yes, there has been a mode shift because Republicans, they used to disparage early voting and claim it was fraud. They've now embraced it and have encouraged their voters to do so. So you're seeing a little bit of a mode shift. But we are also hitting our benchmarks in states like Pennsylvania and across the country, where lower propensity Democratic target voters have been voting throughout the early vote period. But we're not resting on our laurels, right? That's why over the weekend, we were knocking on over 3 million doors across the battleground states, 1.5 million doors in Pennsylvania alone, 90,000 plus volunteers across the battleground states. And that is to hit our target voters, the voters who we know are going to be voting for Vice President Harris, but it's also an opportunity, a final opportunity for us to reach these late-breaking undecided voters who have been moving towards Vice President Harris by a double-digit margins because they've seen the split screen in front of them down the stretch of this campaign, where you have Vice President Harris pledging to be a president for all Americans, regardless of your party affiliation, so that we can bring people together to solve our common problems. And they've seen Donald Trump sort of spiral into the worst version of himself. Instead of offering people solutions down the stretch of this campaign, has spent his time lobbing insults and airing his personal grievances and making it clear that when he walks into the Oval Office, it's not going to be with a to-do list, as the vice president will, but it will be with his enemies list in hand, so consumed with his own grievances that he'll never offer solutions to the American people. And I think that's why you see so much increased energy and enthusiasm behind the vice president down the stretch here. Today is our final opportunity to make.
And it's interesting. So all, looking good there. Some good points made by him concerning the Democrats. Now, it is worthy of note that the two places that Trump is making all these claims about electoral interference and legal challenges will be aplenty are Georgia and Pennsylvania. Again, if Republicans get Pennsylvania and Georgia, then it's looking a lot better for them. Still not enough, of course. You got other, Nevada might need to go their way, and then it's looking good for the Republicans. But I don't think it's any coincidence that Georgia and Pennsylvania are the two places where there is such a heavy discussion of voter irregularities and the mechanics of voting being so problematic, at least for the Republicans. Remember, yesterday I reported in Georgia that they are challenging a bunch of different counties in Georgia for using the particular mechanism, but they're only doing it in the Democratic-leaning counties. They're not doing it in the Republican-leaning counties that use the same mechanism. So it's not the mechanism they have an issue with, it's Democratic-leaning counties they have an issue with. That tells you all you need to know. Now, in terms of giving us a sense of what's going on, here are some videos and imagery of lines of students in Pennsylvania. So there are hopes that students are going to come to the aid of the Democrats in these high-density population areas where you would normally expect the Democrats to do well anyway. This is the University of Pennsylvania, but it's about turnout. This is not just about whether the Democrats win a particular county or two, but it's about how much they win by. And again, to go back to ideas of enthusiasm and young people, here are young people. Again, I've shown you another video of a similar concert in Coachella. This is another concert that's different to the previous one, I think.
Say it louder. I need to hear you.
So if that is a genuine sentiment of young people, and if he's, young people, and again, young people and women are going to, I think, win this election for the Democrats if they are going to win at all. Victor Shee here then says, what I see a very long line of University of Pennsylvania students barely after polls have opened at 7 a.m. So excited to vote. Students are smiling, taking selfies of their voting experience. This gives me so much hope, and it should give you hope too. Just whoever they vote for, this is good, isn't it? The received wisdom here is that they are going to predominantly vote for Democrats, and just, this is a long line of people, of young people, of students getting ready to vote, and it's turnout. So it's not that the students are going to vote more likely to vote for Democrats, it's that there are lots of them getting ready to vote. So here we have Mark Levine saying this is not a line outside a poll site. This is a line of Harris volunteers filling up 6 buses on West 72nd Street headed to Pennsylvania this morning. This is why we're going to win it. So it goes back to that ground game. You've got crowds and crowds of young people super excited to get out and go and help. Not just young people, actually, just crowds and crowds of volunteers ready to get out and go and help with the ground game in a way that you're not seeing with the Republicans. The Republicans, remember, have outsourced that to Elon Musk super PAC. And I think that they, after this election, if the Republicans lose, will rue that decision. Rachel Janzava here says it's election day in Philadelphia. Again, I spoke to more than a dozen young people, 21 to 32 in this line. Nearly everyone and every single young woman listed women's rights or abortion access as a top issue motivating them to vote. Other issues listed were climate, economy and democracy. So again, these subjects that the Republicans have basically left behind. He's either denigrated the climate, hasn't really wrestled with the proper economics outside of, I'm going to put vague percentages of tariffs on everything coming into the country, and the threat to democracy that Democrats are thinking the Republicans are. You have got a bit of an issue here that all of these people appear to be more enthused to vote Democrat is the implication here than Republicans. Again, it's a turnout thing. So Pennsylvania, I've told you it's all about Pennsylvania. Here's a thread from Joshua Smithley, who is Purdue University election junkie. It's been a long election cycle with ups and downs, and my gut feelings are my gut feelings plus data are about the same as they were in August. I think VP Harris is favoured to win Pennsylvania by 2 points, give or take 1, while Senator Bob Casey wins 4-5. Let's break down why. There are limitations as to how much more Trump can squeeze out of those rural areas without cracking their small urban centres, i.e. State College, while facing off against high turnout overall. Some data points for this include WA primary, Seltzer, and PA district polls, etc., etc. So there are lots of people been talking about this. There's this hard ceiling for Trump, and actually he's not doing anything to break out the hard ceiling, and that he can really only go so far. That's why I have him eking out a small win, whereas she's got much further to go. That's what underwrites my range, is exactly that point, is that she's got space to grow into. He doesn't have space to grow into. He's very much interested in his core base and not interested in getting people from the other side and from the independents and the undecideds. She's much more interested in that and doesn't have a hard ceiling in terms of previous data points, because actually she's a bit of an unknown, whereas he's a known quantity. And I say quantity as in he's a known quantity because we kind of can guess the quantity of votes he's going to get. And if the Democrats turn out, then they can go above that. He's going to get this many votes. The Democrats can win this election, and they can win it by loads if they get this many people out to vote, or they can lose it if they only get this many people out to vote, or they can win it fairly comfortably. But he's going to stay there. He's got that hard ceiling. That's kind of my view there, and this is what your man is kind of intimating when talking about Pennsylvania here. So concurrently, the suburbs are highly likely to shift left again. They've done so unbrokenly in every cycle since 2016, and absent decent data, how do you counter additional raw volume from, say, Montgomery County? You look to rurals, which I think that stays somewhat static. Relatedly, the Herculean effort on part of the PA Pennsylvania Democrats to keep margins in those areas down add up statewide. The ground game comparison is not close. If Trump wins, it's going to be because nothing on an organizational level had an effect. Incumbent government struggles post-COVID. This is a really important point. So if the Democrats do lose, it's going to be, I think, about communication on the economy and stuff like that. It's going to be about Fox News controlling a lot of the information that gets out to the wider public. It's not because the ground game of the Democrats was poor. Their ground game's been very good. It's not going to be because Kamala Harris's campaign has been poor. It's actually been very good. Remember, she only joined in with a couple of months to go. It's amazing what she has done. And I think if they don't win, if the Democrats don't win, it's going to be from false perceptions on the economy and stuff like that, and low information voters not being informed enough about the state of affairs in the US and you know what each of these people stand for. Yes, so. However, we do have data that points to late breakers going hard for Harris, as well as her holding up weirdly well with seniors and good margins with women. So interestingly, the Iowa poll, the Anselsa poll, told us age 65 plus women are skewing really heavily towards Harris. Subsequently, Trump's ability to surge turnout from his base isn't going to make this thing a blowout, in my humble opinion. And I agree. It's not going to be a blowout. Trump won't get a blowout. He'll eke out a small win if he wins at all. Fundamentally, nearly everything suggests Harris is favoured except for some pollings, most of which has been breaking for her in the home stretch. You can't just run scared of assuming that polls missed for Trump again without evaluating the context of why. Many of them have made great strides to not underestimate the GOP, modify likely voter screens, the 2020 recall, nuking Philly, etc., to the point where I feel it's more likely they've slightly overcorrected. Way too many tides before this week. And that's a really important point. So just to translate that, the polls have been herding. They've also been worried about 2016 and 2020 undercounts for the GOP and for Trump. And because they didn't want to do that again, even though Biden won last time, he was supposed to win by like a 7.6% margin or whatever it was, and it was a much tighter margin. So they undercounted Trump's support both times. So the idea is that this time round, they've really worked hard not to undercount, but they've overcorrected. And actually, it's likely that they're undercounting Harris's support. And if that's the case, Harris is going to have a much easier path to victory. So congressionally, I expect Casey to outrun Harris by a point or two, while McCormick underruns Trump by a similar amount, partially due to there being multiple right-wing third parties on the ballot, hence the delta. And it's Bob Casey. I'd be surprised if he loses. He's pretty popular, Bob Casey. For House races, actually, we don't need to go into House races and the state legislature. That's my read on things. As far as tomorrow is concerned, who knows? I could be horribly wrong about the state of things. Happy to be, and probably will be, the longer I cover Pennsylvania elections. But I trust my gut and what I see. It served me well in 2022 and 2023. And frankly, if I could go at least for one for two for the POTUS or Pennsylvania senator races, I'd be ecstatic. I've done the best I can. It's up to the voters in both campaigns now. Absolutely. But I think generally I'd agree with that. I think Pennsylvania is looking like it might get some good on the day voting for the Democrats, but it's all about Pennsylvania. And interestingly, Nate Silver, formerly of 538, then going off on his own, and Polly Market and Peter Thiel. So take it with a pinch of salt, but he's run 80,000 simulations for his model, 40,012 of which have come out with Harris winning. So it just favours Harris, which has swung back to Harris from not being so. Breaking news, the new exit poll tracking has just found that early voters who identified as Latino in Pennsylvania have moved 9 points towards Kamala Harris in the week following Donald Trump's disastrous Madison Square Gardens rally. This is huge. So we might see Latinos and Puerto Ricans being incredibly important, particularly in Pennsylvania. And then Nevada's leading pollster, John Ralston, as mentioned in that interview with David Plouffe, just predicted Kamala Harris will win Nevada. That is huge, and I'd agree that is really big. John Ralston, who's never botched the Nevada presidential call, predicts a Harris win in the states. Let the MAGA coping and seething commence, says this person. So prediction, Harris 48.5%, Trump 48.2%. So it's only by 0.3. Others and none of these candidates 3.3%. So that's his prediction for Nevada, and of course that's huge, because I think somewhere that's that close goes to Harris. Although everywhere has their own individual context, I think that you've got then a better chance that I think somewhere like North Carolina is going to go for Harris as well. A final PBS NPR Marist poll, so these are really good pollsters, shows Harris wiping out Trump's lead among men. Trump down from plus 16 among men last month to just plus 4 now. Harris leads among women by double digits, plus 11. That is absolutely huge. There was record-breaking difference between men and women. That gender gap, which if you add them both together, plus 16 for men, plus 11. Sorry, just had to die quietly in the corner there. Yeah, plus 16 for men and plus 11 for women is a plus 27 in terms of the gender gap between the two. But actually, it's a lot smaller now, because it's plus 4 for men in one direction and plus 11 for women in the other direction. So that's only plus 15 in terms of the gender gap. So that's significant that has got a lot closer, as you can see from that infographic. And that is going to favour Harris as well. Interesting coming out here. These are European voting intention for the 2024 US election. So if we were to vote either Harris or Trump, where would it go in Europe? And most of Europe overwhelmingly supports Harris until you get down. So what are the countries at the bottom that are much more likely to vote Trump? And it tells you something, doesn't it? Russia, Serbia, Georgia, Hungary, Bulgaria, Moldova, Slovakia, Slovenia, Czech Republic. Interesting. Well, not Czech Republic. So all of those have a Trump advantage. Wow. Of course, Slovenia is a country of Melania Trump. And then you've got Slovakia and Hungary, very much in a Russian sphere of influence. Serbia, totally. Georgia, obviously. Russia. And then Bulgaria is an interesting one there. The UK isn't looking great. 68 to 32. So actually, it's 2/3 to 1/3. That has changed over time. Trump hasn't been particularly popular with even conservative politicians, really, of the old school variety. We're just going to talk about that in a second. As Americans head to vote in the US election today, a recent poll has shown that almost half of young Brits aged 18 to 34 want Donald Trump to win the US presidential election. Wow. Almost half of young people compared to 17% of over 65s. I think this is TikTok and manosphere. I have an issue with one of my 14-year-old boys telling me how isn't it great that Andrew Tate is innocent now and blah blah blah. I'm like, dude, what is the algorithm sending you to watch at the moment? Because I don't think you understand Andrew Tate, and I'm deeply worried about him at the moment. Because I think people's opinions are being dictated to by their algorithms on their social media feeds. And I think that underwrites a lot of the youth voters skewing back towards Trump and towards that kind of grievance narrative nationalism. And I do think it's a problem going forward that we need to address. And in the old days, young people would be idealistically left-wing, and then there'd be, throughout their lives, they would have that idealism tainted by, real life and growing up and creeping conservatism with age. And there's interesting connections of that, how people become more one way or the other, or have certain thinking patterns that solidify over their lives. Anyway, I won't go down that rabbit hole, but it seems like, goodness me, that kind of model is changing, and younger people are growing up with these grievance narratives that really feed into that kind of Elon Musk, Donald Trump ideology. Now, here we have Trumpism is alive and well in Britain, says someone. Several major figures in the UK politics have endorsed President Trump, some in quite shocking ways. We've got Boris Johnson, we've got Liz Truss, which is hardly surprising. Suella Braverman, hardly surprising. Jacob Rees-Mogg, hardly surprising. All of these, it doesn't surprise me at all. I love this because I like Jess Phillips. I will admit, I think she's great. Just challenging this particular Tory politician.
Donald Trump? Too soon. Always. Too
Bring
soon.
him back. Bring him back.
You don't actually
much
think
better
that.
president than
You don't
Biden.
actually think that.
Economically, Biden has been a disaster.
And that's just incredible. I know this was back in January, so okay, this is a long time ago. But the idea that Biden's been economically disastrous is absolutely not defended at all by evidence. So this particular Tory politician is just completely wrong. Jess Phillips is just great.
Bring Donald Trump back.
What would it mean for your party?
Um,
How would he make Rishi Sunak look? Do you think they'd get on?
I have no idea. I think it'd be good for the States then.
You really think he'd be good for the States?
I do.
Like a bit of insurrection, do you? Why don't just knock it out? Well, don't bother having an election. Just get a load of people to take over Parliament. General election here?
Love it. Absolutely love Jess Phillips there. That's absolutely brilliant. They don't need an election, just need an insurrection. So the other British politicians who were doing the same, Kwasi Kwarteng, who was a controversial neoliberalist Chancellor of the Exchequer under Liz Truss, it was an absolute disaster. That's why she got kicked out. Robert Jenrick, who ran against Cami Badenoch recently, lost out, but he's an absolute wingnut. So those are the sort of people in the UK supporting Donald Trump. However, and this shows the difference. This is the idea, like Rory Stewart the other day, saying that actually true conservatism is not represented by Donald Trump's populism. And this is William Hague. Now, he ran the Conservative Party from 1997 to 2001, right? Saying this about Donald Trump. And this is an absolute conservative politician. So, you know, this to me speaks of that schism in the Republican Party between old school Reagan Republicans and your populist right now, the MAGA populism. So all those Tory MPs that we just heard from previously were MAGA populists. That's who they are. And this is William Hague.
Definitely dangerous to have as the most powerful man in the world, or certainly in the democratic world, somebody who finds it totally routine and normal to threaten and bully and intimidate opponents, who did try on January 6th, 4 years ago, to instigate an insurrection against the Constitution of the United States and to overturn entirely illegitimate election results. That is definitely dangerous, to give huge power to such a man. So I think, you know, it's not just distaste. I mean, the distaste is obvious. He is a rambling, you know, nasty individual, but he's actually positively dangerous. And that's why, although there's lots wrong with the Democrat Party, and there are many, many things we don't know about Kamala Harris and what she would actually do, I'm not saying she's a perfect candidate. Given this choice, it is really, really important, really consequential for the world that Trump is not elected tonight.
And that's a massive not endorsement of Trump from a previous Conservative leader in the UK. So, yeah, that's the state of affairs in the UK. There is apparently a growing support for populism potentially there in our midst. Okay, so that's my prediction. What do I have? I had Georgia as well, but any of these could go the other way. North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona could go blue, but I've got it just in Republican. Nevada could go red, but I think just in Democrat. So all of these 7 states, I think Wisconsin and Michigan are safer blue at the moment. I think Pennsylvania, signs are good, but things can change. That's my tuppence. Let me know what you guys think. I really appreciate your support. I really need a cup of tea. I've been speaking all day today without a cup of tea, and I am done. Thanks. Take care. Speak soon.